when Samsung unveiled their S24 line, the Ultra is the undisputed like King Kong of that phone lineup. And Samsung came out flexing hard. They're like, we got titanium, we got space zoom, we got AI features, we got a cutting edge processor, we got the best screen in the business, fast charging, wireless charging. Anything you could want in a phone, we have it in the S24 Ultra. And those are big words, and those are fighting words in a really competitive phone marketplace. So I did what any respective tech reviewer would do to put it to its test. Took it to a Laker game.
Coming in, flex. I just wanna win,
And I didn't just take it to like any Laker game. I took it to the Kobe statue unveiling outside of Crypto.com Arena, which is weird that it's not Staples Center anymore. So let me give you guys some context for where I was. I was sitting in section 333. You can see the map here, what the stadium looks like. I was not overly close to the court. So regular use case for a camera. Here's what it looked like just on the 1X. You can see the entire stadium. It looks beautiful. The court looks great. And this is hard lighting to take pictures on. It's dark around me. The court is lit. I think it's a pretty good picture. Then as you start to zoom in, you can see things more and more clearly. You can see what it looks like on the various focal lengths here. We get the space zoom, which is the 30 to 100 times. So here's what 30 looks like. Here's 100 times. And remember what that original picture looked like. He might look like a bit of an oil painting, but you can see that is very clearly LeBron James. From how far away I was, that was incredibly impressive. We were using space zoom to try to spot celebrities and see who else was there at the game. You're not gonna wanna use that for your every time camera. It is very sort of niche when you wanna use it. But it worked, and it did exactly what Samsung said it was going to do. When you wanna have that extra zoom, you've got it. But there's a lot of other things that go into the camera. It's the camera hardware and the software. So if you kind of flip it on its back, this is essentially the same camera system from last year. Not a bad thing. You still get the insane 200 megapixel main camera. You get a 12 megapixel ultra wide. You get a 10 megapixel 3x zoom. What's new though is the 50 megapixel 5x telephoto. And this is different from last year's 10 megapixel 10x zoom. For like me, you're probably thinking that sounds worse, at the very least like a side grade. But I do think this was the right move from Samsung. But here's why. So the 5X camera has way more quality. And because of that resolution, you can digitally zoom in and get that same 10X zoom, and it actually looks better than the dedicated camera that was there before. So in my mind, that's completely worth it. And I'm a guy who uses like zoom a lot. Now, I'm not using 100 times zoom. I'm taking pictures of my kids at baseball games. So being able to have that various zoom levels is awesome. And I actually pick cameras generally based on the zoom that's in it. But aside from the zoom, the cameras are, in typical Samsung fashion, really good. Your photos will come out a bit oversaturated. You can obviously tweak that down if you like. But pretty much we're at the point now with Samsung cameras that every photo you take, no matter how you're taking them, what scenario you're taking them, will be some version of good. Here's some examples. Look at the sky, see how the blues come. Look at the green, see how the greens pop. Here's a portrait shot, see how it's cutting things out. Any aspect I could throw at you looks good. It might not be the best to your eye, but if you're just evaluating the photo on its own, every single photo looks good. When it comes to video quality, it seems that the iPhone has taken the spotlight for the last few generations just as the best video quality phone out there. If I had to pick one Android phone that shoots the best video possible, undoubtedly it is the S24 Ultra. Again, here's a video from that same Laker game. In very bad scenarios, this video is crisp, it looks beautiful. You can put it next to the iPhone or any other flagship phone out there. This video stands on its own. The camera system has everything you need. It's got a ton of camera sensors and focal lengths. It's got amazing camera processing. It's got great video. It also has a ton of AI features. It really is kind of a one-stop shop for the best camera experience out there. And all that AI stuff comes to the software. I think these days it really sets a phone apart from another isn't really the hardware anymore, especially when it comes to flagship Android phones. They all have kind of slightly different take on how to build things. At the end of the day, usually a slab of metal with a screen up front and cameras on the back. S24 Ultra is no different, even if their new titanium metal is pretty fancy. What's starting to differentiate phones is the software running on them. And this year, Samsung decided to use the ultimate buzzword everywhere, AI. And yes, admittedly, going into it, I thought Samsung's abundant use of word AI was more of a marketing ploy. But after using this phone for a while, I really did use some of these features. And the S24 Ultra feels as useful as it's ever been. And it's a big part because of what the AI is doing. Now, I don't know if this is Samsung doing this on their own, if they're pulling features from what Qualcomm's offering with the processor, the Snapdragon 8 Gen 3, if they're pulling from what Google's offering with Android. You see some of these features on the Pixel phones. Whatever they're doing, it's pretty epic and it works incredibly well. So here are some of the highlights. You've got circle to search. Essentially, you can long press on either the home button or that little bar at the bottom. Circle anything you want and it'll be searched on Google for you, which is pretty awesome. You have things like Live Translate, which is awesome. Real-time two-way call translation, the phone app, that is pretty epic. Transcript Assist is here. Use AI to transcribe a voice memo, and then it can even summarize it for you. It can summarize articles for you too. There is a lot more in AI, and there's a lot more that this phone does. There's generative AI for photos. You can move things around and it'll fill the spot where that subject was moved. There's a lot of AI happening. I can make a whole video probably based on AI. And if you didn't know it was there, you probably overlook it completely because Samsung, as much as they talk about AI, it's not front and center really in their phones. It's kind of a little button. But if you click that button, I think you'll be very impressed with what Samsung is doing. How often would I continue these features over the course of a year? It's hard to say. I'll keep using the phone and let you know. But it's important here that these features work, and they work how Samsung said they were. So if I ever need them, I confidently can say I can use them. And really at the beginning of using this phone, I'm kind of enjoying it. I think what Samsung's trying to sell you is an incredibly powerful device at a good value. And that mentality should filter through to any other things that you buy. So meet this video's sponsor, the Life and Swift Special. This is a $400 hairdryer. This is a $200 hairdryer. And the feature set is incredibly similar. This Mama Jamma has been drying my daughter's hair for the past about 3 months. And for hair that looks like this, to go to hair that looks like this, that should probably sell you on it enough. But this thing does an incredible amount of things for a hairdryer. First of all, it dries super fast. It's got an independently developed 110,000 RPM high-speed brushless motor. In case you're wondering, that is 5 times faster than traditional hair dryers. There's a hot and cold circle mode built in that can protect your hair and scalp from heat damage. It automatically knows what temperature to use. There's a patented LED light ring built in. It's also incredibly quiet at 59 decibels. And most importantly, you can do this with it. It's incredibly lightweight and portable at just 0.89 pounds or 407 grams. It's awesome for travel or on the go. It's a hairdryer that looks like a much more expensive one, and it does exactly what it should do, fast, effectively, and uses an incredible amount of technology to do it. If you want to check out the Swift Special for yourself or buy one, 35% discount in the description down below. I think one aspect of software since we overlooked a lot, or at least the significance of it, is also software support. You buy a phone from a lot of manufacturers that something happens to it, you are out of luck. And all these AI features are great, but they stop working a few years down the road on a $1,300 phone. That's kind of money down the drain. Samsung is kind of putting their wallet behind them, saying this phone will get 7 years of software support. That's not just for small things. This is 7 years of major Android updates and improvements, plus you get security updates as well. It's a very long time. That is 2031. So it takes that $1,300 price and makes it seem a bit more worth it, or at least you get the best value out of that dollar. And I don't think you're gonna use a phone for 7 years, but the fact that you could is pretty awesome. It's not just a phone for this year, it's a phone for sort of years to come. I'm glad companies like Samsung and Google are making that a priority. So on the hardware side and sort of the design side, this year Samsung took a very familiar page out of the smartphone playbook and tweaked the design to give it a flat glass front, which I love, and squared off the edges a bit. I think the waterfall edge they've had before always looked really nice, but the flat edge is just easier to use. And I think what makes this phone feel familiar is the band around the edge that is now made of titanium. Now look, clearly I think we have an idea where Samsung got this sort of notion to use titanium from, but setting that aside, I think the changes here are great. The phone feels really solid in the hand, and the new glass up front is easier to use. I don't know how the titanium's gonna hold up. There's been a lot of mixed opinions on how well it's gonna hold up over time. I can only speak to mine. Never had a case on it. I don't have any scratches yet on it. I'll keep using it, and maybe I'll see some wear and tear to titanium, but been pretty impressed so far. That aside, you also get features like the S Pen, the absolutely beautiful and insane 6.8-inch screen, which has become one of the staples of sort of Samsung flagships. I'm a screen snob, I talk about it over and over again. There is no better screen than a Samsung screen. This one gets incredibly bright. It also has got some glare resistance in there as well. If you care about a screen, and you should, this is still the best screen ever put on a smartphone. And powering all that is probably one of the best processors ever put in an Android smartphone. The Snapdragon 8 Gen 3, which is helping a bunch of that AI tasks, making sure this phone feels really snappy for years to come. And I think this processor is like peak Qualcomm. Everything about this processor is fast. There is nothing you can do, no matter app you can run, no matter multitasking or things running side by side you can do that is going to tax this processor. I don't care what benchmarks you run, the end user experience, everything is smooth. I think a lot of people that are very ensconced in the Apple world look at sort of Android fluidness with kind of, they thumb their nose at it. If you haven't used a modern Android phone, you don't know what Android is like. And there has never been a processor in a Samsung phone as efficient, as smooth, and as powerful as what is in there right now with the Snapdragon 8 Gen 3. All that stuff has to be able to be powered too. There's a 5,000 mAh battery here, and I've stopped talking about battery life in phone reviews because it is just so freaking subjective. Depending on what third-party apps you use, if you've got memory drains and that kind of stuff. What I can say is, in my experience, and I use a lot of third-party apps, a lot of social media apps and video recording, I can easily get through a day. And that's awesome. The time I plugged it in at night, or at least put on the wireless charger, I was at about 20-25%. So for me, that is more than good enough. Your use, though, is going to be all over the board. The S24 Ultra is not a revolutionary phone. It is perfecting an older formula. And in a lot of ways, every year we want something new, a brand new design to look and feel different. This feels different enough while also feeling familiar. What makes this phone stand out is that pretty much every aspect of it is good. You're hard pressed to find something this phone does not do well. That's not to say there isn't a phone that might do something better, but everything this phone does, it does extremely well. Whether it's photos and a bunch of different focal lengths, or video, or using the display, or having S Pen, or anything that you wanted to do with this phone, it is all good. This phone is a winner from top to bottom. Whether or not it deserves a place in your pocket, I can't answer that for you. But if you're in the market for a new phone, you don't have any smartphone allegiance, you just want one of the best out there, you've got to check out what Samsung has here with the S24 Ultra.